Donna Gregory. Coming up next on the 5:30 First News, a nightmare of a night for hundreds of people in our area. We'll have the latest on the tornado and the destruction it left behind. We often think such disasters happen only to others, but this one hit home, our home. How communities pull together to try to pick up the pieces, and everything you need to know about insurance for this type of tragedy. All that and much more coming your way next. Join us.
From WRAL-TV, 5:30 First News.
It was a hysterical scene. Everybody was crazy. They was delirious. They didn't know what was going on. There was no lights. No one could see anything. And everybody was running except for those that were trapped. And then we started looking for the people that were trapped to see if we could help them.
Neighbors pulled together in North Raleigh as most of us slept through the night. Without warning, nature snuck up on the city with a vengeance. More than a dozen tornadoes touched down in our part of the state. This was the scene early this morning. Homes mangled and torn from their foundations, trees uprooted and tossed about like matchsticks. Good evening and welcome. 4 people are confirmed dead from the tornado, and when you look at the damage, it's amazing. Many of the survivors walked away from the wreckage that had been their homes. Destruction was everywhere this morning.
Up there.
It only took minutes to wreak this kind of havoc on North Raleigh. With no warning, no one had time to prepare for the tornadoes. And just look at the destruction. Pieces of people's lives scattered everywhere. Most just felt lucky to be alive.
I just came right through our apartment, but we woke up and heard it coming, so me and my roommate just grabbed each other and we just went flying around. Everything came down on us, but we dug out, so we were lucky we were on top, so we didn't have too much on top of us.
One of the places hardest hit was the K-Mart off Highway 70. 4 employees were inside when the tornado hit. 3 made it out soon after.
I was walking toward the back of the store, and I heard something coming. I heard a lightning, and I got scared of lightning anyways. And I got toward the back of the store, and I heard a boom, and I heard a crash toward the front of the store, the windows, and I knew I couldn't make it to that, so I started running, but I knew I wouldn't make it, so I got to the toys, and I ducked under, and that's when everything started falling.
The last worker was pulled from the wreckage a short time later. He suffered a broken leg. Now the heartache sets in as people start the slow process of cleaning up. Fortunately, neighbors are pitching in, and the Red Cross has set up emergency shelters for people left homeless by the tornadoes. Those rescue efforts are continuing throughout this evening and overnight. The dead include 2 Raleigh children, 8-year-old Janet Barnes and 14-year-old Pete Foldrum. The other 2 deaths occurred in Nash County. Leroy and Mary Alston were found locked in each other's arms inside their mobile home. As we said, one of the hardest hit areas was the Town Ridge Shopping Center off of Highway 70. The K-Mart, which stood there, no longer exists. Bill Leslie is at that location. Bill, we cannot believe the destruction we can see behind you.
Oh, it's incredible. I mean, you're looking at the lingerie section of the K-Mart store here, which was totally wiped out by the storm, with the exception of a few gardening supplies and some automotive supplies. Everything was pretty much wiped out. Let's talk about the path of the storm. The tornado that struck North Raleigh bounced around kind of like a pogo stick early this morning, but when it did come down, it dealt a crushing blow to whatever was beneath it. At 1:15 this morning, the twister made a nose for the K-Mart at the Town Ridge Shopping Center. The storm also ripped through several apartments in the area and struck Highway 70 and Pleasant Valley Road. The storm also carved a path up to Lead Mine and Lynn Roads north of K-Mart. Another area hard hit was the Summerfield North area. From there, the storms veered east and northeast, striking Nash, Halifax, Northampton, Franklin, Dare, and Pamlico County. So it really did do some terrible damage. Now you can see behind me here some of the devastation here at the K-Mart. Police earlier today made several arrests for looting, and they're keeping security very tight here tonight. Many of the people who live in this area around K-Mart are without power tonight. The last word we had from Carolina Power and Light was that 2,500 people were without power. And if you'll excuse me, I'll get a little information in front of me here. Carolina Power and Light Company crews told us that they'll have extra crews working on through the night trying to restore power to the area. Some people in this area, though, may have electricity until tomorrow, and it's going to be a very cold night. CP&L officials say there is so much damage in some neighborhoods that some of the entire systems will have to be rebuilt from scratch. In Franklin County, the latest word is that 400 people are without power tonight. 20,000 CP&L customers at one time or another today were without power following this devastating storm that roared through here beginning about 1:15 this morning. Donna.
Bill, you were here in '84 when another devastating storm whipped through. How does this compare?
Well, in terms of casualties, it doesn't compare. 44 people died in 1984. More than 800 were injured. Here, 4 people died, perhaps more than 150 injured. The storms were not as great this morning, not as powerful, not as immense or as vast as the storms in 1984. But there was one thing that's very interesting. This storm that came this morning came without any warning at all. The barometric pressure suddenly took a nosedive. Back in 1984, I can remember Greg Fishel warning people up to 36 hours in advance of the storms that we could be in for some rough weather. No warning this time at all, Donna.
Bill, and that is something that we'd like to touch on right now if we can. The question, of course, on all of our minds, how that storm managed to hit with so little warning. And Greg Fishel once more joins us now to explore that question and to shed a little light on the forecast coming up. Greg?
Well, Donna, there are two ways, I guess, in which you can actually deal with forecasting an event. The easiest way is when there is already a history or a past record of what a storm has done. For instance, had there been damage reported in Charlotte last night and then on toward Asheboro, it simply would have been a matter of figuring out where it was going to go from there. But the initial damage report actually occurred in Wake County. If we can show you a map very quickly here as to where the counties were that were affected by the storm last night. If we can punch that up, there you go. The first report of damage actually came out of Wake County about 1 to 1:15 in the morning, so we had nothing to go on from past history. None of the radars in the area indicated anything all that abnormal. They indicated normal shower and thunder shower activity, and this is a problem in this part of the country. The tornadoes here in North Carolina are not as easy to see on radar as they are out in the plains, and so sometimes 1 or 2 of these things can sneak by you. A few years ago, back in Zebulon, tragically, there was a man killed by a storm that on radar looked very, very innocent. Certainly the residents of Zebulon remember that all too well. But thankfully, the worst is over now. We're in for a dry, cool period as we head toward tonight and tomorrow, and then the chance of a bit more rain on it as we come up toward the middle part of the week. We'll have, of course, much more on all of this coming up at 6 and also during our special at 7.
All right, Greg, we thank you for that insight. Many people who were left homeless by this morning's twisters are seeking shelter this evening. Stuart Scott joins us now from one of those places. And Stuart, are there a lot of people there? We can't really see behind you from this shot.
Well, Donna, right now there are about 3 families here at the Martin Middle School on Ridge Road in Raleigh. That's about 25 people altogether, but earlier there were dozens more. Red Cross officials tell me some of the people have gone back to their homes to try and assess the damage. Others have found shelter with friends. But many of the people who are left homeless tonight, many of those who have found shelter with friends, well, for well over 100, they have been left. They've had to come here to take refuge here in the shelters. And for them, Leslie Boney tells us this has been a day of painful separation and fear.
111 faces, 111 stories of a night these folks will never forget.
It's a miracle that we all live. And when I prayed for my family, I prayed for everybody in the apartment complex. Because it was just like a locomotive, and I could hear it coming from a far distance.
What did you lose?
I really won't know till I get back.
What these people wanted more than rest was to go home, see what was left of home. But for much of the day, with their neighborhoods closed off, they had to stay here. With their roofs gone, they were grateful for a school gym roof over their heads. When warmth and shelter were taken care of, ham radio operators were there to link the evacuees to their loved ones who'd heard the stories of the storm.
We're really expecting to bed down here tonight. Whatever you need, just let me know.
And stories there are. Peter clutches at a pillow. It's all he has left from his apartment.
When I looked up, there was only the sky. And when I looked over to where the bed had been, only the frame was there. I couldn't tell you where the mattress and box springs were.
They're confused at what's going on outside in their homes, and they're not sure exactly what to expect when they come into the shelter. So that usually takes a lot of coping.
Coping made easier by clothes, donated by others who've heard, who care.
Well, we surely thank you.
Maybe most important in the short term, businesses have come through with food, not home cooked, but the closest to home any of these folks would get on this day.
I know this is a special day to be thankful.
Leslie Boney, WRAL-TV News, Raleigh.
Now, the Red Cross is providing warmth, shelter here, mattresses, bedding, food. There are even games for children to play, and there's even a nursing staff here if anyone gets sick. The Red Cross officials tell me they're going to be here as long as anyone needs their service. Donna?
I'm sure we all appreciate that too, Stuart. Martin Middle School isn't the only tornado-damaged shelter operating this evening. People also can go to St. Mark's Methodist Church located on Sixth Fork. In Wake Forest, the local fire department has set up a place for those in need. Also, the Ramada Inn at Crabtree and Blue Ridge is offering free rooms, but only if people are referred by the Red Cross or fire department or other emergency people. And as usual, the Red Cross is aiding those who need it. If you need the agency's assistance, call 833-3017. Or, if you'd like to offer your help, call 890-3350. The Salvation Army has also set up a post for people to bring blankets and clothing. You can take the supplies to T&S Public Storage on Departure Drive. That outlet will be open until 6 o'clock. Clothing donations also are being accepted at the entrance of North Hills Mall. WRAL-FM is collecting items for the homeless. A spokesman for the radio station says you can drop the items off throughout the evening. Dick Messenger says anyone wishing to make a donation after tonight should call WRAL-FM. And still ahead, Governor Jim Martin talks about the tornado damage he saw firsthand today. And Renee McCoy joins us with her own personal tornado tragedy. WRAL's own is experiencing this tragedy firsthand. Renee McCoy's home in North Raleigh was damaged, and she joins us now. Renee, this passed right over my house in Cary, yet a touchdown in yours. How are you making out? We saw your husband a little earlier. You guys cleaning up?
That's exactly what we're doing right now. My husband Tony's over here with a couple 2x4s. This is actually a part of the roof. This actually caved in, and this branch of pine is the culprit. Not this branch. It was the entire tree. About a 50-foot tall tree just caved in through our ceiling. It happened just as the tornado was going past. We've got a gaping hole, as you can see there, Donna. It's going to take a while to get things cleaned up, and it's taken us a while just to try and get things acclimated. My husband just put up some weather stripping and some ceiling at the top. What'd you do with that?
Well, basically, we try to cover the hole up and keep the water from coming in if it started raining yet.
As you can see, we got a lot of insulation and wood and you name it right in our dining room. So, Donna, this is how we're trying to make out. We won't be able to stay here tonight. We can see straight to the sky through the opening in the ceiling, and, of course, the cold wind is blowing in, so we're going to have to find another place to stay tonight.
Well, you're welcome at my house. You guys are insured. How much damage?
Yes, we are insured. We're not sure of the damage yet. We're going to try and find out as soon as we can to at least start some of the repairs.
Okay, Renee, we wish you luck, and the offer still stands.
Thanks.
When the 5:30 purchase continues, we'll talk with the governor about the tornado damage. Governor Jim Martin has been out today surveying the damage. He joins us now live from the governor's mansion. Governor Martin, thank you for joining us. First of all, are you going to try to get this area declared a disaster?
We've already submitted a letter to the Small Business Administration for one step that needs to be taken. They have available low-interest loans, not the same as not having been hit by the tornado, but at least it'll help both residences and businesses to recover to that extent. In order to qualify, we had to find some 25 facilities, both homes and businesses, that had over 40% damage that wasn't insured. But there was so much damage in Wake County that we believe we can certify that, and so I've already submitted that letter, and will for other counties as the evidence accumulates. It'll take us a couple days to get the evidence that we need.
Will we qualify for federal aid?
Well, when I mentioned the Small Business Administration, that is a federal program. Generally, when people speak of a disaster declaration, in some states you can't even get the state agencies, the Highway Patrol and so forth, the National Guard, mobilized to work on the program. But in North Carolina, fortunately, a couple of years ago, they took a step where we don't need to do that. Just immediately, as soon as the first call comes in, the state agencies begin to respond along with volunteer agencies from the affected area of the state.
Governor, lots of folks moving into the area, they're used to hearing the civil defense sirens. People are asking us all day long, was there a problem with the state system? Can you address that?
You mean as far as an early warning is concerned? Well, apparently from interviews that I've seen with the Weather Service, there was no forewarning from the weather pattern. They knew that there was a storm, that there was the first leading edge of a front, and that it was broken up into maybe 4 squall lines, but it wasn't until the first tornado touched down that it began to show evidence that it would be a tornado system.
But the state's emergency system is intact, and they will work should we need them.
Well, it's intact. I don't know what kind of warning there would be in that area that would have been satisfactory. Again, there was very little, in fact, there was no advance time before the first tornado touched down. And the evidence that's available shows that it developed very quickly, I mean, just in moments, as the thundercloud formation built up to where you had the kind of energy, the kind of wind pattern that would produce a tornado. It started at the southern end of one long squall line and worked its way straight up that squall line right up on into Northampton County.
Well, Governor, we thank you so much for taking time to join us. We understand you're going to have a busy next few days. We wish you luck.
Well, thank you for what you and your associates and other news media have done to help inform the people and show them what's out there and maybe save them a trip into areas where they don't really need to be right now. But there's a lot of heroism out there today as well as a lot of tragedy early this morning.
Again, Governor Martin, thank you for joining us. Rush hour traffic is bad enough, but with traffic being rerouted because of the tornado, it's more hectic than usual. Let's check in with Mark Grady to see where the snags are. Mark?
Well, if anybody's using Creedmoor Road northbound, Donna, it's going to be a nightmare from Glenwood Avenue all the way up to Sawmill area. Also, eastbound traffic that's on Glen Road and Sawmill trying to access Six Forks Road to get from those areas are really backed up and causing problems. As officials say, if you don't have to be in this area, it's best to stay out because all in this area, especially the major league travel routes, including Glenwood Avenue returning to Raleigh around the K-Mart area, all of those are jammed up, and it's better to stay away from those areas so that folks can continue to clean up. Donna?
Some advice to follow, Mark. We thank you. Some people who lost their belongings in the tornado will get them replaced, but some are out of luck. Details coming up.
Homes, businesses, killed 4, injured many. Now the process of rebuilding begins. How have people been affected?
I'm just lucky to be alive.
As part of WRAL-TV's continuing coverage of the disaster, we will present a WRAL-TV News special report at 7 o'clock tonight.
Never in my life.
There are many stories to tell. Join us for The Wake of the Tornado, tonight at 7 on WRAL-TV.
The storm has passed, but the devastation remains. Hundreds of families face major cleanups, and Tina Selden joins us from the home of one of the victims to see how they're coping. Tina, this is one of those times where insurance can be a real lifesaver, right?
Yes, it definitely will be in the days to come. And as you already know, Renee McCoy and her husband Tony had a bad night last night, and they've had a bad day, and they join me now. But luckily, Renee had insurance, and I'm sure, Renee, that's one of the first things that you thought about.
Minutes after it happened, I read my policy by candlelight because the lights were out, and immediately, first thing this morning, called the local agent.
Well, that's what you need to do, and that's a mistake a lot of folks make. Instead of calling the agent, they call the insurance company office. You need to definitely call your agent. They can file your claim more quickly. And because there are so many people who need repairs right now, expect a wait before your house is back in shape. The dust is clear, and the people who live in the storm-ravaged houses and apartments can only be thankful it wasn't much worse. Among the victims, Renee McCoy and her husband Tony. A tree fell on their house, causing extensive damage to the roof inside and out.
And we heard this loud noise, and it was just as people have always described to me on camera. It sounded like a train coming. We immediately got up and went into the bathroom, which was the safest part of the house, and just huddled together and just hoped that it blew over.
Now, like hundreds of other victims, Renee and Tony wait to see how their insurance company handles their claim. If you own your house or condo, chances are you have insurance. Lenders require it before you buy. But if you rent, it's a different story. About 75% of the people who rent aren't covered.
If they don't have any insurance, the landlord is not carrying the insurance for them. So they're out of luck.
What about the cost of renter's insurance? Does it come out being beneficial, or does it cost a lot?
It varies according to where you're living, but it usually runs about $100 a year.
And how much coverage do you get for that $100?
For about $15,000, $20,000 worth of coverage.
It's too late for many victims this time, but agents expect a flood of calls from renters who now want policies. But insured or not, a positive outlook never hurts.
A lot of people go out to a Christmas tree lot and buy a tree for Christmas, but ours just comes through the roof.
Well, Renee, you seem to be in pretty good spirits about it. How do you feel?
Despite the damage, we've got to be thankful because a lot of people were hit a lot harder than we were.
That's true, and thanks a lot. And we are all thankful that not more damage or more injuries took place.
We certainly are. Everybody keeping their chin up. That's important. You know, it is hard to find anything upbeat to say about this tornado. But when we come back, you'll see some folks making the best of a bad situation. City like this morning's tornado strikes, the losses are hard to calculate. But sometimes, in the midst of the chaos, something special happens. Communities bond together. People look out for each other. Dennis Edwards shows us that's what happened in at least one North Raleigh neighborhood.
This kind of tragedy seems to bring out the best in people.
Darling, are you okay? Can you move? Okay.
These men rescued a woman trapped behind a chimney. They are her neighbors in North Raleigh's Hampton Oak subdivision, attempting a rescue with their bare hands. Ted Spingler doesn't have much left. He lost most of his house and a new car. But he didn't have to face his losses alone. His neighbors were there.
They've been walking the streets, checking on people, helping the rescue folks, helping the police around here, and everybody's been checking up, and it's been a real good neighborhood.
It didn't take long for this community to come together. As soon as the winds died down, neighbors were helping each other.
Well, we're taking each other into our homes because there's a lot of people here that they're going to be cold and hungry and so on, and don't really have any place to go, and there's a number of them that won't be able to come back.
Most people here aren't worried because insurance will pay for most of the damages, but in a strange way, this community has gained something special from this tragedy.
A lot of us don't know each other. We don't know our next-door neighbors and so on. This morning, a lot of us know each other. Come together. People that you just kind of waved at going down the street, now you know them.
Dennis Edwards, 530 First News.
It is nice to know you have folks you can depend on here. That's the 530 First News for this Monday. Thanks so much for watching. We have more coverage for you on today's tornado destruction up next. And WRAL-TV will bring you a special report tonight at 7. Have a good evening, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Good evening, I'm Charlie Gaddy.